Now, about 15 years ago, between 10 and 15 years ago, it was a big trend in the greater Kruger area to try and monitor various animals. So they put collars on elephants, they put collars on wild dogs, they collared lions, and an array of different species of animals. And they did this because it was experiments that they were trying to figure out. They wanted to track vast movements was a big one. So between the various animals, what their movements are they migrating? Is it seasonal or different things? And with the wild dogs, of course, it was quite important because we know that they're an endangered species. So any information you can get about a wild dog is super important. Lions, they were doing a lot of projects to see if any of them were being affected by tuberculosis or in feline AIDS. So they were tracking individual prides. I remember this quite clearly. I read a document about the report and the study. And so they needed to keep track of the various prides. And the thing is that you don't have to necessarily have the GPS collars on them. But if they disappear for a day or two and you can't pick up on them, then they can move kilometers and kilometers or miles and miles away. And to try and relocate on them and lose a week, that's, days that you're wasting away that you could use for valuable research and data collecting. But since then, they have taken the collars off to sort of try as an intrusive sort of approach to the GPS collaring. So they've removed quite a few off the elephants. We used to see a lot of the elephants coming in from Kruger with these collars on, but I believe that not many of them were working. So we used to have to report them, and then the vets would come in and dart them, remove the collars, and then of course wake them up and send them on their way. And there's a pack called the Toulon Pack of Wild Dogs that's down. It lives sort of, where do you live? Between the Sand River and the Sabi River. And it loves those areas, or that pack, and it's quite a big pack. There must be at least 25 of them. And one of the males has actually got a collar on, and I believe that they've got no interest in taking that collar off. They've been tracking the Toulon Pride pack for many, many, many years, and he doesn't seem to be too bothered by it at all. What they might do, though, and something that's quite interesting, is the collar sizes are now changing. So from 15 years ago, when they were large and bulky, they're now sort of downscaling them quite a bit and making them more slender, not as obvious. And of course that'll have a positive impact on the animal too, is that it won't bother them as much anymore. I'm not a fan of it though. I think this Panthera project, I think they're getting it right. We're just sort of observing them. We as the guides out in the industry, obviously they have people specifically following the animals around as well. And we just report on the information. So as we're sitting here, I don't know, I think Kirsty will probably be putting in all the info for the Panthera on who we saw. Did they have a kill? Was it on the ground? Was it in the tree? Was the mother present? And all these various things. And we send this data through and we get reports for the entire Sabi Sand because there are a lot of different lodges that are involved. Now, and that's something that I actually quite enjoyed. And in the Eastern Cape, we used to have, I'll just quickly chat. I'm really intrigued by this GPS conversation, and I think we've got a couple of minutes here. In the Eastern Cape, we used to have GPS collars on the rhinos, and that was purely from a monitoring perspective because it is so dense there. It's mountainous with rivers and valleys, and the vegetation is so thick that you can't even penetrate 5 meters through it in the summer months. We used to keep tabs on our rhinos just when we couldn't see them. And poaching, unfortunately, was quite high in that area. And a question that I used to get asked quite often, and I'm sure James and Stef and Brent and Jamie have had the same thing, is that we often had guests asking, why don't we just track the animals so that it would make it easier for us to spot them? And I think that takes the fun out of it. And also, a GPS collar on an animal does not guarantee that you're going to see them. We've had it before. We're tracking the rhinos, looking for the black rhino to see if they were okay. We knew exactly how far away they were from us, but we could not even see it because the vegetation was so thick. So yeah, that's one of the reasons why we don't do it. And I don't think I would ever want to work on a property where they just track the animals. I think it really does take the fun out of it. How do you think, Jeandre? Then becomes a bit of a zoo, hey? It's not great. So this is wonderful. Some days we see lots of animals, and well, some days we don't see anything, and that's just how the bush goes. Shame, little ones, you're cold and waiting for mum to come back. Now, Christian, you were wondering how long these cubs will be left alone for. It depends on when, and how, and where, if their mother makes a kill, and how far away it is. So she could be gone for a couple of days. It's not uncommon. They would have had a nice feast on whatever the Karula took down yesterday or the day before. And they've been eating so that they don't look particularly hungry. But it's very, very normal. I mean, I've seen a leopard once leave her cub in the same spot for a week. Well, that cub obviously was starving, but mom eventually came back and fetched it and took it off to an impala kill where they feasted away. And we see it with lions too. I've also seen it where sometimes cubs go missing, they get lost, or mom has intentionally left them in the spot. Maybe she's only on her own and she doesn't have a pride. Then she's got a hard job ahead of her to go and look for food. And that's, of course, what mom's around for. Is mom's there to also protect the cubs, but she's responsible for feeding them. So if she keeps coming back every couple of hours to check on them, well, then she's not going to have very much of a chance to successfully capture something. And sometimes these hunts take hours of planning. It doesn't always just happen in a matter of minutes. Now, I want to just have a chat on the radio. I just want to find out who's coming. Everyone has just left all of a sudden. Does anyone know how many vehicles are coming to the sighting with Xongile and Hosana? Okay, copy. Okay, well, it doesn't seem like 100 people are racing in this morning. So we shall sit here for a little bit longer until we get kicked out. Not that anyone's going to really physically kick us out. I'm just joking, of course. So what we'll do is we'll hang around for a little bit and hope that Karula's going to come back. But for the meantime, let's go over to Stef, who's in the tent.
Yes, and I'm finally playing with this little microscope that James is so fond of, and I must be honest, this is the second time that I'm having a go at this microscope, and I'm enjoying it so much. There's just so much you can learn and see. But before we jump into what I want to show you underneath this table, I just want to amend my previous statement about the spider's longevity to James. James, so the biggest spiders, they do live the longest. The megalomorphs, the baboon spiders or tarantulas, they definitely have the longest lifespan, and it would seem that it's connected to their size. Most other spiders, I originally said, live around about 5 years, and while we do have a large portion of spiders that do get to 5 to 10 years, by far and wide, the majority of spiders live and die within and mate and lay their eggs and do their things within an 18-month period. So definitely longer than a year. Probably find that it's between 12 months and a year. A growing season, in other words. Some spiders get between 5 and 10 years, with the longest lived spiders going up to about 30 years in captivity. So just wanted to clear that up. Now, we have got the most unbelievable thing here. That, what we're looking at, is a buffalo thorn, a fairly common plant that we find out here. And you can see that it's flowering in these clusters. Now, yesterday while we were walking around in the bush, we smelt a carcass. And for the life of us, between David, myself, and Herbert, we could not find what had died in this particular area. But every time we came past this place, it would smell, and we'd searching. A little bit later on in the walk, I heard this buzzing, not from the same place, a different place. And when we investigated what was making this buzzing noise, there was a whole colony of flies the regal blowflies or carrion flies, flies that are normally associated with carcasses, were all feeding and pollinating on the buffalo thorn's flowers. So this particular buffalo thorn is pollinated mainly by flies. And those flowers, as pretty as what they are, and I'm going to show you underneath the microscope now, have a distinct carrion-like smell. And we could only imagine that yesterday's smell that was wafting out of the bush was because there was a buffalo thorn in flower in the area where we were. Oh, and we just, it is a pong, I tell you. And obviously the smell is attracting these flies, which come in mass to come and pollinate the flower. And there is the flower. I must say, let's get them just a little bit closer for you. There you go. There's one there. It is a little bit wet, which is giving it that sheen. And that's what you're seeing at the moment there in the center of the screen. One has already flowered just to the below of the center. You can see that the ovum have started to swell. And that is where the buffalo thorn's fruit will come from. The fruit we can actually eat. The flowers smell like carrion. They are pollinated by flies and are just unbelievable. Just have a look at the detail on this little flower. That is amazing. Like I say, James in this microscope, quite interesting. Quite a sensitive little thing, this actually. Ah, yes. And off to the right-hand side of the screen, you can actually see a leaf. Hang on, wait, I'll just get my direction right. There you go. That has quite obviously been eaten by something. Now, from what I understand about insects, beetles eat center of leaves, caterpillars eat from the outside in. So this looks like some type of beetle has fed on the leaves of this buffalo thorn and has led to those very distinctive holes that we're seeing there in the leaf itself. Wow, this is lovely. Let's go back to that seed. That seed is still brand new. In actual fact, you can see the remnants of the flower just above it. And then, of course, the flower with its male pollen-bearing part sticking off to the side. Looks like there's 6 per flower. Very, very, very cool. See what else is on this particular flower, or on this plant, I should say. We can have a look at. Apparently there's there's a spider web there as well. Wow. Now, that's quite interesting because those spider webs look like anchor webs. So those spider webs look like the anchor web that a spider will just plant as a safety line, basically, when moving from one part of the flower to another. My feeling is they were probably planted there by a crab spider. Crab spiders hunt on flowers and particularly fond of bees and flies. And I think what's happened in this particular case is that the mass of flowers that smell like carrion attracting those blowflies or those carrion flies. Let me show you what those flies look like. They are horrifying. We were with a couple yesterday in a buffalo carcass that was just most unbelievably disturbing thing. Let me show you what they look like. So there's a crab spider. That is what I expected to be on this particular flower. It's a female crab spider with a male crab spider, much smaller than what she is, holding a bee by the head. That is what I'm expecting has laid those lines, those safety lines on this particular buffalo thorn's fruit. And this is the fly that we were looking at yesterday. It was this fly here that had pollinated or is busy pollinating the buffalo thorn. And that is what I think has been being hunted by these crab spiders, at least anyway. Now, Alexandra, you've asked me, is there anything here related to the durian fruit? Now, I know that the durian fruit smells like a rubbish bin or a refuse bin that's been left out in the open. I have tasted one before, and it was not too bad. I mean, it's not something that I'd go and buy in the shop, of course, and the smell that emanates from these fruit is just something unbelievable. The closest that comes out here, other than this buffalo thorn, which I actually didn't know smelt like carrion, is the Stepelia family of plants. They are the carrion flowers. They don't smell like refuse dumps. They do smell like carrion as well. Also pollinated by flies. They're these thick, fleshy looking plants that just resemble something that's just rotting and smelling like rotting stuff down here. As for refuse, I suppose a wet hyena comes close to smelling like a rubbish dump, and a durian fruit that is about as that, or a wild dog that's been lying in a puddle. They can be quite smelly. But as for fruit, no fruit smells like that durian that I know of, at least anyway, in South Africa. Now, I picked this up the other day as well while I was here. This is a piece of quartz, and it's got a nice break to it, and by that I mean, look at that crystal facet, those two parallel lines that are running along it. Now, quartz, or silicon dioxide, precipitates out of water, and quite often they get these faults in them, and you can see that there's a fault right there, and into that fault will go water. And if we just get the light right here, I'm almost sure I'll be able to show you what grabbed my attention when I picked this one up. Is there's water inside here that is refracting light. Very difficult to show you, although there we come close. You can see the light coming off of that, but it's throwing off the most unbelievable rainbow colors. I'm going to try and see if I can find it for you. No, I'm not having any luck with that one today. It is very pretty. Just see if I can see it with my naked eye under this type of light. No luck there, David. No luck. Let's see if we can put it underneath the microscope and maybe a little bit more of a direct light source. There we go. All right, there you can see the rainbows coming off of the water that's stuck inside this crystal. Isn't that unbelievably pretty? Excuse my crusty fingers coming into the shot there. It is muddy out here today. But there you go. There you can see the rainbow refraction from the water stuck in the crystal itself, and that is what caught my eye while we were walking through the bush. That is water stuck inside a quartz crystal. Nice, eh? I know, it looks like a piece of opal, to be quite honest with you. So it's taking pride of place on my desk in my room, which has a fantastic collection of a whole bunch of different things. This is pride of place for now. All right, so that's what I have to say right now to you for that. I'm going to send you over to one of the other two, and enjoy yourself.
Everybody, we've been singing a lot in the rain, of course, because it is very cold. We're heading north-southeast now into the driving rain. Well, it's not very driving, but it is misty and cold. Now, I do apologize for the fact that you haven't seen us for a long time, although I've no doubt the Leopards and Stef kept you entertained. It is that we have got a little problem with our signal. We've only got one functioning tower at the moment. There it is, Brian. We've been following that bird, but unfortunately we haven't been able to film it because, of course, Brian is basically in a house on the back of this car, but now it's parked in a place that we can get it. Isn't that gorgeous? It's the Bateleur, the juvenile Bateleur that lives around here. We're just off Drakensberg Road, which is the eastern corner of Djuma, and we're close to the south, and his parents have a nest not too far from here, and he's just gone to the loo. Wonderful. You can probably hear the pitter-patter of rain. That bird is much more miserable than both Brian or I. Well, Brian, of course, is in a... I wish we could show you what Brian looks like. I might have to take a picture with my phone and then you can see. Doesn't it look like a sad, sad bird? Let me just quickly unlock the phone. Now, while we look at that gorgeous Bateleur egg. That, everybody, is what Brian looks like. Can you see Brian?
Oh, wonderful.
He looks like he's very comfortable there. That's marvellous. Good, back to the bird. I've now lost feeling in my fingers. I'm going to have to sit on my hand for a while. Ah, that's good. Aaron, you, like many of us, are waiting for two things. Firstly, the impala lamb of the season, the first one, and then secondly, of course, the woodland kingfisher, which arrived tomorrow last year, if you know what I mean. It arrived tomorrow last year, 16th of November. And, Aaron, you're wondering if this increased rain will bring them down here any faster. No, I don't think so. I think that round about now is when they would normally arrive. And so I think they probably will arrive fairly soon. Very soon we shall hear the chip, and for the first week the chip will be a lovely sound of the summer, and then after 2 or 3 weeks we'll think, well, that's quite loud, and then after 4 months we'll just be so happy when they pick up their bags and go away. Sorry, that's quite emotional. It doesn't so much apply in this area, everybody, but where I used to work, up at Nyala, which was in the middle of a Mopani woodland. And Mopani has lots of fungus in the heartwood, which means that there are lots of holes for woodland kingfishers to breed in. And it meant that you were living in a swarm of woodland kingfishers through the summer. And by the time they left, everybody couldn't wait for them to go. But over here, they're just the right number, of course. I'm very glad you're all pleased that Brian is warm and comfy, unlike that Bateleur and me. That poor Bateleur, there's nothing he can do. Right, let's carry on. At least he has oil on his feathers, of course, and the oil on his feathers will help him to stay relatively waterproof. But you see, he's probably been sitting in the rain now for, well, I don't know, when did it start raining? Probably last night at around 10 o'clock. And it's been going pretty much ever since. And if you look frontwards to where we're going, which you don't really have a choice about doing, because if you look to the side, all you're going to see is canvas, you can see that there really is quite a lot more weather coming in at the moment. We're expecting to have 70 millimeters in the next, or before Friday. Now, 70 millimeters in inches is about 2.5 plus 2.5 plus 2.5. It's about 3 inches of rain in the next 4 or 5 days. So that's quite a lot. But this roof has made a vast difference to our lives. We would definitely have wrapped the drive a long time ago, everybody, if we didn't have this roof that the great Connor has managed to construct for us. Well done, Connor. Well done. Good job. Excellent. Well played. We did have we had 2 things to show you, but I'm afraid we lost signal. The first was what was it, Brian?
A tortoise.
A tortoise, yes. That's Speke's hinged tortoise, and then we had a hippopotamus in Buffelshoek Dam, and it was just lying down in the mud. Now, I think there's a vulture just up ahead there. Brian, do you see?
I do.
And there you will see the mist. Look at the mist. Oh, it is so misty and ominous. Papow. Pow. Now that is a vulture, and the vulture has decided to hide its head from the world. It's tucked its head underneath its wing in order to stay warm. Now that's very clever if you're a vulture, because you don't have much feathering on your head, so your head, a bit like mine and Stef's, which also don't have much feathering on them, get cold when there is a wind and rain. It's quite clever. It looks a bit disembodied, doesn't it, Brian? Look at that mist, everyone. Ooh. That's where Tayla is, pretty much. Okay, let's carry on from that little sighting. I'm rather hoping that this misty morning will bring us our first baby impala. But we've seen nothing but... We did see a steenbok as well. But Stef was busy with a microscope, so it ran away in... No, not yet. They didn't react at all when we drove into the lion sighting. They did a little bit when we flapped down the flaps, but that's because they went ha-wump, ha-wump. But once the ha-wumping had finished, they stopped being upset about it. Now there's a bird above us, which I'm afraid you are going to be unable to see. Can you see it there, Brian?
I can, look at that.
Gorgeous. It's a gymnogene, everyone, being attacked by a drongo. It was really a gymnogene being attacked by a drongo. Sorry about that. That's the one disadvantage, of course, of the roof. One day, of course, we'll have a foldable, retractable glass roof like, well, I don't know, like you've got on a sort of fancy BMW or some sort. Yes, exactly, Louise, like a convertible, but with a see-through roof. Be nice, Brian, wouldn't it, to just go beep and have it fold on and off. Putting the roof on is, well, look, it's not the most impossible thing in the world, but it's not very easy. One must be physically capable. And it does help to be quite tall. Now, Stef is finding all the content today. He's managed to find some sort of insect. I've no doubt it will be very colourful, especially in high-definition microscope.
It actually is. It is a jewel beetle that we found on a raisin bush that's just outside the tent. I must say, James's tent is the source of endless fascination. Once the rain has stopped and I got my jacket on, I was feeling a bit warm and motivated to go outside. But come and have a look at this. It is the most unbelievably pretty beetle. Have a look at that. Tiny, no bigger than no longer than the fingernail on your hand. The baby fingernail on your hand. And just look at how fantastically colored this is. A bright coppery colored head. Excuse the shake there, everybody. It's the caffeine this morning and the lack of a stand. And you can see that it's been feeding on the sap of this leaf because of the presence of the droppings behind the beetle. It's been there for quite some time, enjoying, I don't know what it looks like. It is just so splendidly colored. So I would say that this is a jewel beetle. It's unfortunately not identifiable in the book that we have on Insects With Us. Now, Anna Marie, you've just asked, have I always had an interest in insects? And thank you very much for paying me a compliment to say that you learn so much from these insects from me. I actually have, to be quite honest with you. And I must say, it's always been, I grew up in a forested area of South Africa, a very tropical forested area of South Africa, in the tops of trees. My memory just tells me I was virtually a primate for my whole childhood. Blessed childhood, in actual fact, and we were inundated with a lot of different insects in the house. And I think my interest really started from there. in that you were either scared of them and, you know, went into a flat panic, or like me, your interest was piqued. And I took that a little bit further. When I was at university, I studied zoology for 2 years. And in my second year, was privileged enough to study under a doctor or professor, Eric Holm, who was one of South Africa's leading entomologists. And for most of my second year at university, I spent with my nose in the books for insects, which of course then translated into a deep understanding of insects here. Well, love for insects, not a deep understanding. My understanding was very shallow, in actual fact, of insects. But it's nice to share it with you. All right, now before James's tortoise runs away in this cold weather, we're going to be sending you over to him, and I'm going to be looking at this jewel beetle a little bit more.
Brian, what's that?
That, James, is a tortoise.
A tortoise.
A tortoise.
That, everybody, is the Speke's hinged tortoise. I don't know why Brian and I are saying tortoise like that, but we started doing it earlier on, and it feels so very satisfying to say tortoise.
Look, a tortoise.
That tortoise, everybody, is really enjoying the wind, and those ones live in termite mounds and specially little designed burrows. And now he's going to hopefully eat some nice fresh vegetation. There you are, have a bite. Go on. Eat your greens. Because a tortoise like this does not only eat greens, it's drinking. Look at it, it's drinking out of the leaf. How cool is that? It also eats giant land snails, believe it or not. So he's looking for a snail, some escargot to eat. He's very streamlined, this fellow. So he's looking for a little bit of escargot for breakfast. Would you like escargot for breakfast, Brian?
No.
Not?
No.
Not your vibe?
No, not really. I don't think I've ever eaten escargot.
It's quite nice. It tastes like sort of garlic snot.
Oh, I love it. Wonderful.
I think that tortoise is hiding from us now, Brian.
Ooh.
See how well hidden he is. Now, the best part of where we are now, everybody, is that we're at the far southeastern corner of Djuma, which means from here on, the wind and rain will be behind us, to our backs. So that is very good news. Not for Brian, of course, who's basically as comfortable as, well, somebody at home. Goodbye, tortoise.
Tortoise.
Janelle, much as you're wondering how we survive through these trying times of the rain, you're wondering what the birds and animals do when there's a heavy downpour. Well, they normally just hide in the bushes if they happen to be mammals, and birds just kind of the big birds just kind of hunker down and sit like that, and they can't really do anything about it. But the other birds will get into thick bush. So some of them will get into thick bush and try and avoid the rain. Others will just kind of suck it up, as it were, like that roller you saw for the first time this morning with Tayla. That roller probably would have just had to put up with the rain. They like to display their territories, and I don't think I'm sure their bodies register cold. Whether they register that sensation as unpleasant or not, I don't know. But it certainly is it's not a nice thing for us to be wet, and so this roof is great. For some. Justin, you're wondering about tortoise eggs and how they manage to lay them. I'm not sure about the Speke's hinged tortoise or where it puts its eggs, but I'm pretty sure they will be under the ground. They will definitely be under the ground. And then the sex of the new little tortoiselings will be determined by the temperature. And again, it's very specific to each reptile species as to what temperature determines which sex. But I think it's somewhere around the breaking point, somewhere around 37 degrees Celsius or so, which is about, what is that? That's about 98 degrees Fahrenheit. And around about that point, any hotter than that and the babies will be males, any colder than that and the babies will be females. But they lay their eggs under the ground somewhere. Where they dig those burrows, I don't know. I suspect quite strongly in a termite mound, and I don't know how many they lay, but if memory serves me correctly, it's about 20 eggs, I think. And that is the Speke's hinged Tortoise. There are tracks of a massive elephant bull here. Ex-Ranger, you see, you are correct, of course. You're sitting in Tasmania, if I'm not mistaken. You say you thought it was the heat that made people go mad, but you see now that it is in fact the rain. It is the rain, yes. Brian went mad first, I think, and then I went mad shortly thereafter. And that is why we say, Tortoise.
Weather doesn't make us mad. We're
Doesn't
mad
it?
already.
Yes. Right. I'm going to give Brian his medication now, and while I do that, let's go across to Tayla and get an update from her.
We're still sitting here with young Hosana and Xongile, who are curled up into little balls, having a sleep, awaiting the arrival of their beautiful mother Karula. However, there's been no sign of her so far, and we suspect that she's disappeared maybe into the south, looking for a meal, because that's sort of where all their tracks were, but we're obviously a little bit uncertain. Now, we're just going to stay here for a couple more minutes, and then we're going to carry on and see what else we've got out in the wilderness this morning. I believe it sounds like James is having an absolute field day with all the small little critters, all the tortoises and things that he's picking up along the way. I'll be quite excited to find some of those too. And well, hopefully this afternoon these little cubs will be reunited with their mother, and well, I'm almost hoping that she hasn't made a kill south of the boundary. I hope she comes back and then tries again here in the north, because we're a bit selfish. We'd like to see her every single day if we could. So that's what I'm hoping. It's been so nice to have all three of them around, and also just to get an update on their condition and how they're doing. And at least we can safely report and say that they look fantastic, healthy, growing well, developing their own personalities, turning into beautiful leopards. Xongile is not even showing her face or her nose. She's got it tucked underneath her tail, trying to keep herself nice and warm. Now, hello Ellen from Arkansas. You were wondering, would these leopards cubs have a tough time trying to climb a tree and get away from a potential predator because the rain has now made the bark nice and slippery? Now, I don't think so, because what happens is when they do climb up the trees, they bring those claws out, which they keep hidden away, so we know how nice and sharp they are, and hook it right into the bark. So unless it's perhaps an old tree and the bark is flaking, that might be a little bit tough with a combination of course, the rain obviously wetting the bark. But I think that they will be all right. Let's have a look. They've got quite a few little trees around here, and you know what they've actually got? They've got this big marula. Now, sorry, the pole is in the way, but they could quite easily go up this marula tree. You see there's little crevices, it's not too high, and there's a couple of horizontal branches, and they'd easily be able to run up here and climb up to this tree, to the very top. And if not this tree, well, there's so many bush willows and other fallen marulas in the area, they'll definitely be able to get away, even if they hide in a thorn shrub, something like that. That might be another tactic that they will do. So that's where you also have to say thanks again to the elephants that push over the big trees and create the big mess. Of course, like I always like to say, the ground birds like to go and hide underneath that. A leopard cub may use that strategy to get away too. But for these two, for now, I think they're safe. The lions, I think, are quite far away from these two. And they'll just have to listen carefully. There's Hosana shuffling again, trying to get comfy. Hello, boy. But it's not raining heavily. It's just a, I suppose you could call it a mizzle. It's a miserable drizzle. So it's, yes, I've had guests actually tell me that once, a mizzle. So I said it the other day in camp, and everyone looked at me as if I was going bonkers, but that is a word, I think. And I think it describes the rain perfectly. Shame, I feel so sorry for him. He's just looking into the distance, hoping that he's going to see Mom coming around the corner. And what's caught his attention is, I don't know if you can hear it, it's very far away, but there's a couple of birds shouting. But that could also just be a food party moving through, because it sounds like a couple of different species. Rollers, and so I heard a chugra and a drongo. So perhaps it's just a food party moving through. Sorry, my boy. Not the birds shouting at your mother. Come back to sleep, he goes. I think we're going to leave these two little bundles of joy sleep away in this miserable weather. And if we get any reports that Karula has come back, well, then I'll definitely try and sneak back into the sighting. But for now, I think we will let them rest and have a good sleep. Now this is going to be fun because we've got the roof. And it's a quite wooded area, lots of terminalias, lots of bush willows around. We need to try and find a way to get out. So let's see how this is going to go. But luckily not too many thorn trees, which is good. The thorn trees are the ones you really want to avoid with the roof because they can rip the top and we don't want to do that. But now I also can't see. Let's turn here. Okay, so what I'm going to do, I think this is going to be a little bit trickier than what I thought, and you're probably going to laugh at me getting stuck. So let's go back across to James so I can save myself the embarrassment.
All right, now, the other day when I was on a walk, we managed to find these little grasshoppers that I want to show you here. This is a full-grown grasshopper. I'm being very careful not to hurt him for you. But they live in short grass areas on rocky ground. And we were amazed at exactly how camouflaged these grasshoppers are. There it is there from the side. Have a look there. Now at the time I called it a stone locust because they resemble stones in grass. So just have a look at that. But what I really want to do is show you what they look like in their environment. So I've mocked up an environment here. Have a look at that. I'm going to see if I can get him closer with this microscope for you, just so that you can see the stones. No, have a look there while I'm busy doing it with David in the camera. That's probably a better view. Have a look at that camouflage, what a few stones can do. Isn't that the most awesome thing you've ever seen? All right, now we're going to let him go. I don't want to hurt him too much. And then I'll show you what type of locust he is, mainly because it doesn't really have a common name, I'm finding out. Excuse me blasting you like that. I just want to put him on the sand where we found him. He can carry on with his day. All right. This is the grasshopper that we were looking at. Right there. You can see those short, stubby little legs, very powerful. They don't fly. They live on, they feed on short grass and they live in sandy areas. And they look like those stones that they live amongst, mainly to stay hidden. Now, you're going to help me with this name because I cannot pronounce it. Have a look at that. Tmetonata is how I would say it. Tmetonata. And as you can see, occurring over the whole of South Africa. So I'd call it a stone locust. Of course, there are other stone locusts that are actually stone locusts that don't occur here. They occur in the, here we go. There's a stone grasshopper. That is what I thought that it was, a stone grasshopper. You can see there, looking very much like the stones that it's around. I mean, you can forgive my oversight to that one. This Tmetonata that we have over here. Definitely him. These ones here. These little guys there. That's what we were just having a look at. Tmetonata, and fairly common that we're finding them out here, all on the open grass areas. Awesome. So you see, you learn something new here every single day, and just give you a little bit of time to actually sit down and research some of the things that we're seeing out here. You can establish some of the most amazing facts. Obviously quite humbling. And also the fact that somebody has managed to know so much that they've written a book about it. And now we have access to it. Makes me feel a bit lazy and useless from time to time. I must say, it's been, for a wet day, it's been a pretty awesome game drive experience. I mean, we've got the lions on the property, and we've also got those two young leopard that you've been sharing time with Tayla. Of course, we can expect the seasons to change now with the rain coming along and the animals to disperse into the bush around us. We've got an enormous expanse of bush up and around the 8 million acres. And that is going to allow a lot of dispersal. All right. Now, Rachel, sorry, you've just asked me a question. I couldn't quite catch it through there. This is a bushwalk earpiece that I've got at the moment. I just want to get that question. All right. So, Rachel, you just asked which is my favorite season to guide in the bush. Rachel, I quite enjoy May because it's the end of the beginning of the dry season, end of the wet season. The grass is starting to lie nice and flat, and animals are starting to come to watering points. And so you're getting these concentrations of animals starting to happen. And then I also enjoy January. Out of the two, May or January, I enjoy January the most. And it's mainly because of just the sheer number and diversity of life that we find out here. And it actually ties in quite nicely with my previous statement about what can we expect to evolve during the safaris for the next couple of months. We can absolutely expect the amount of species that we see in any one game drive to increase. So the amount of birds, the amount of insects, frogs that we're starting to uncover, and just generally just the diversity of life we can expect to increase, but we can expect the numbers of animals that we see to decrease. Not the diversity, there will always be lion and leopard and buffalo and elephant and wildebeest and such around, but their numbers will start to decrease. So as we start going into our summertime, we can expect the fact that we won't see 100 elephant on a game drive, we will see 20 or 30. We won't see lions every single day, we'll see lions every now and again. As the animals disperse, so the lion and so the leopard will have to disperse and hunt a lot more vigorously through their territories in order to find enough food to feed one another. Things that are territorial don't disperse as wide. So let's use lion again as an example. Lion will they have an area that they live in, territory, a core territory that they'll defend with their lives in some cases, and a home range, which is the area that they will move in. They don't go out of that area. In this particular area, lions have home ranges of about 5,000 hectares, which is about 10,000 acres or so. And they will, in summertime, they will be moving through these areas a lot, mainly because the prey availability is scattered. Animals don't have to come to a particular water point to get water, and so they don't have to congregate. And also food is available all over the place. And so you get these little groups of animals spread out all over the Kruger National Park, making it difficult for predators, making it easier for the herbivores. But also, it's going to make it it'll be different. For those of you who've been following Safari Life for all these years, you'll notice that species will absolutely increase and numbers will actually decrease. And so that's what we can expect over the next couple of months. Looking forward to it though, to be quite honest with you. All right. We are going to be sending you over to one of the others at the moment. Oh, excuse me. We're not going to go over there. We're going to answer a question. Now, Clinton, you've just asked me how long does a wet season normally last. Clinton, we have our rains, our first rains falling in about September. First rains over 20 millimeters. So first rains over this much, we're having falling in September to October sometime. And then the rains sort of go away and we're finding these sporadic frontal rains like we're having today, occurring all the way up until December, when the low pressure system is situated firmly close to the country. Over the two low pressures that govern our rainfall are situated over the country. And then we start getting our heavy rains from about Christmas until about March, with the heaviest rains falling at the end of June to mid-February sometime. That is when we have our wettest season. It rains almost every single month here, but the last decent rains that we have, we can expect at the beginning of April, sometimes into May, but very rarely into May, and then it'll start tapering off, with the driest month being October, where we have maybe a rainfall or two, but virtually no rain in October. Yes, and that's about that from a seasonal point of view, from rainfall. Temperature-wise, the hottest temperatures are also in October, for me at least anyway. I think the hottest months are January through to February, where it'll peak on very hot days into the upper 50 degrees centigrade over here, but quite often is quite short-lived. And there'll be these billowing clouds that develop, these cumulo clouds that then blot out that burning sun, and obviously sometimes bring thunder showers in the afternoon, which cools things down considerably. Night times here, comfortable most nights, probably about 3 to 6 weeks a year where it becomes unbearably hot here. And so it does get uncomfortably hot here for about 3 to 6 weeks, depending on the year. And then cold, I don't know, I get cold very, very easy. I'm a person who enjoys the heat, but it does get cold here, freezing, just below freezing, just over freezing, also for about 3 to 6 weeks a year. So we don't get snow here, but it definitely gets cold enough to warrant lots of balaclavas. I don't know, I have 3 or 4 blankets on my bed. I sleep uncomfortably for 3 or 4 weeks over here. And the rest of the year is pretty much temperate and quite pleasant to live in, to be quite honest. And it's one of the more pleasant places on earth, I'm told, to live. Anyway, on that note, James has found some signal again, and so we're going to be putting you onto his vehicle and hearing what he has to say.
We also found some impala, everybody, but none of them had a little baby. Female that was with them, the ewe, was very, very full of babies still, so they haven't given birth yet as far as we can tell. And I'm sure that, in fact, I think I mentioned it the other day, there are a few down in the south of the reserve, impala lambs I mean, but very few up here. And that's interesting, because people will tell you, of course, that impala are able to drop their lambs when conditions are favourable. Well, conditions have been favourable up in the north here for a lot longer than they have down in the south. And interestingly, well, not surprisingly to my mind anyway, the impalas have given birth with much the same control that we have over when we give birth, which of course is no control whatsoever. Well, if you're going for natural childbirth, that is. James, you're wondering about these sorts of conditions and whether they will be a bad time for impala to give birth, probably because you think maybe these conditions are better for predators than they would be otherwise. James, yes, to a certain extent that is true. I suppose it wouldn't be ideal for them, but for 2 reasons. I think far more dangerous than the weather conditions. It just means the predators are going to hunt during the day more than they would, as opposed to at night only. I think far more dangerous would be the fact that the youngsters could die of cold shock quite quickly in weather like this. You'll see here, Brian. Do you know what this is, Brian?
It is a flower.
It is a flower? Do you know what kind of flower it is? Have a guess. It begins with a J and ends with a Ein. And it has an S in the middle. There we go. Well done, Brian. Some wild jasmine, everybody. And I know you shouldn't really pick wild flowers, but they smell so delicious. I couldn't stop myself. It smells just like jasmine you might have in your garden, probably slightly more subtle and with a little bit more honey. Oh, it is wonderful. Have a smell, everybody.
Thank you. Oh, that's delicious.
It is so delicious. Brian is now very happy, everybody.
Thank you, Jen.
So delicious. And you can also see that the conditions are brightening up slightly. That doesn't mean that the rain has stopped, but it is certainly getting a bit brighter, which is nice. I shall still put my rain cover back on my leggies, because I, unlike Brian, am not in a tent. Or Stef, of course. Right, on we go. It's delicious. Put it there. Oh, Verena. I feel like I really should know the answer to this question. There is a Nyala cow. She's on her own. Rena, you want to know about malaria and whether animals can get it? My answer is no, they can't. And I think the reason for that is that just over evolutionary time, they have developed an immunity to it. So animals do not get malaria as far as I know. And as far as I know, I think they're tryposomes, they're called, which are the parasites. As far as I know, the malaria parasite needs a human host. It cannot survive in animals. Well, we are animals, in wild animals other than humans, as far as I know. Oh, it's a very, very wet Nyala, that. Where the rest of her herd is, I don't know. They're probably in the thicker bush there just behind. Justin, you want to know if this flower is edible? I'll taste a petal for you.
Delicious. Not so much. Oh dear.
Justin, I don't know if it's edible. It doesn't taste really nice. I really don't know about this plant, so I'd be very careful about eating it. I just gave it a very brief taste. And if you are out here and you're wondering and you find yourself desperate for something to eat, and maybe there's been a great flood and you've been unable to get out of your lodge and you're alone, there is a kind of rule of thumb. If you want to test if something is toxic out here, you do exactly what I just did there. You take a very slight bite with or put it on the top of your teeth, and you taste that. If there's any kind of burning sensation, then you immediately discard it. If there isn't too much of a burning sensation, you can probably put it on your tongue and see if there's any burning sensation then. And if there isn't, then you can probably go a little bit further and maybe swallow a very tiny little piece, see if that has any effect. And that's basically how you work out whether something is poisonous or not. I'm not going to go through that process as far as the wild jasmine goes. I'll probably just go and read up on it when I get home. But it smells too delicious to be poisonous. Right, the Nyala has disappeared into the bush. Let's continue. We've seen just one very small herd of impala today. I think hiding a bit like Brian in his tent. There's a whole lot of bird activity going on here. They're just on the tree there, Brian, on that knobthorn. I think there's a crombeck. Honey's ocelot, oh, well spotted. As we look for that bird that's hopping about in there, you want to know what that plant that smells like diesel is a little crombec, long-billed crombec. It's called Clerodendrum tapetum. Clerodendrum tapetum. I think it's, no, ternatum, sorry. Clerodendrum ternatum. Judy H. is going to be very upset with me. Clerodendrum ternatum is what it's called, and I don't think it has a common name. Beautiful white flowers, foul-smelling diesel leaves. There it is. Little crombec, no tail at all. Isn't that sweet? It's not what's calling. You can hear a drongo calling in the background, everyone. That little bird goes... Brr, 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 brr. Gorgeous. And then on the road, sorry Brian, is a ring-necked dove, fluffed out for the cold, trying to find some grass seeds to eat. This, of course, the bird of peace, and the preening that it's doing now is extremely important, because that's how it stays free of water. And you can see it's doing a rather better job than that Bateleur was. Spreading oil from the glands. I think, where are those preening glands? They're just underneath the chest there, I think. And it'll be taking oil from those chest glands onto the feathers and just covering them in oil so that it stays waterproof in the rain. Looking for little grass seeds and probably ants. I think rather like the impala, you know, with the ring-necked dove. There is a kind of temptation to pass them off as common and not too worthy of too much consideration. But they're truly impressive birds when you think about what they achieve. Very, very fast. They're common because they're highly successful out here. And they walk quite nicely, don't you think, Brian?
No.
Yes. Right, well, this dove is going to go across the road, out of view, fairly soon. Let's head across to Tayla, get an update from her, and we'll head north continuously.
Now, earlier we were talking about, I'm actually first going to jump out the vehicle very quickly, but we were talking about things that could potentially harm a leopard's cubs. Now, I've got the footprints of one of those exact things. Let's show you. They look like massive footprints, feet prints. Feet prints is not a word, hey Jean-Andre. I was saying that earlier, now it's stuck in my head. Feet prints does not exist. I'm going to go to these ones over here because these ones look a little bit nicer. Let's have a look at this big track over here. Just make sure that there's nothing. But of course it's quite easy to tell that it's a hyena track. Where's my stick? Let's get a little stick. Because, and I think we showed you leopard tracks a couple of mornings ago. The most important thing is that when you look at the back pad. Now, unfortunately, this track over here doesn't seem to be the neatest of tracks. But you can clearly see, I don't know, I hope you can clearly see. Chandre's shaking his head. Anyway, there are two lobes. One, two, and they always seem to stand at a bit of an angle as well when they run. They're not very neat. It's not like a horse that flicks its toes out and it's got a beautiful, perfect track. I think when a hyena runs, should I demonstrate? Let me demonstrate how a hyena runs. I'm not going to go down on all fours though, because I don't think I know, because I can't, but watch my feet though. I think they run a bit like this. Something ridiculous along those lines. Yes, the silly hyenas, because their paw prints always seem to be turned in or turned out slightly, so I don't know, they've got bizarre looking feet with the big claws that I'm sure you could see, and they ran down here. It looks like, let me just double check again, after the rain. There doesn't seem to be too many raindrops, and if it let me zip back around, and I'm not convinced that they actually are hyena anymore. I'm wondering if it perhaps wasn't James or Stef early this morning, out on a run. Maybe they've got new shoes with a tread, with a hyena paw print. Looks like it, because there's two sets. So it could have been the two of them just playing tricks on us this morning. But we haven't seen those hyenas around. Just a couple, where did I see them? On Arathusa. There were some about a couple of weeks ago. That was quite nice to see them. But now, I'm not sure what else we're going to see this morning. Chandra and I have both been talking about elephants, so I think let's see if we can find us an elephant. I don't know if there's going to be any around. but we'll have a look. Jean, how funny is this? Look at this marula tree. I'm going to try and position it, you can actually see it. Can you see which way the wind was blowing? How cool is that? It looks as though somebody has painted the right-hand side of the tree, but of course no one has done that. It's just the rain, and obviously the wind was coming from sort of the southeast and then blowing into this tree. So just the one half of it is a little bit wet. So if it was a giraffe or maybe something that's tall and slender, an ostrich probably could have stood behind there and stayed nice and dry. I thought that was very funny, just looking at all these various trees as we go along, and well, only one side of them is a little bit wet. So let's continue. Let's see who else we can find. Maybe a millipede. That would be nice to have a look at see if we can find a millipede, a nice long one. We'll look around some termite mounds and on the trees. I think they'll be up on the trees as well. But otherwise, an elephant would be fantastic. Now I'm going to go searching for either one of those two creatures. I'm just quickly checking because I know they like to sit on these bush willows, those Xongololos. Are they here? Not this morning. Okay, well, let's go back across to Stef, who's nice and warm and snug in his tent.
I wouldn't call it warm. The wind is howling through here, but definitely not at the same pace that it's howling through those vehicles. So I am a little bit warmer, but it's definitely chilly today. Chilly enough, at least, to warrant 2 jackets, a shirt, and a vest for me. Now, I'm going to ask Louise to repeat the name of that little jewel beetle that we had a little bit earlier. We have had confirmation that it is a jewel beetle. So I'm just going to ask Louise to repeat the name so that I can do it in stages. It's going to come to you in stages. Now, Georgianne in Illinois, I just want to say thank you very, very much for this. Here we go. Buprestidae, which means jewel beetle, so it's a buprestid, which is good. Acmacdera. Buprestidae acmacdera was the jewel beetle that you, Acmacdera grata. Acmacdera grata. Buprestidae acmacdera grata. So thank you very, very much. It's a mouthful, that one. But thank you once again for helping us identify that one, at least. It's not in the books that I have, but at least we've got you out there helping us with that. So thank you very much. Now, on to the next thing. Now, the other day on the walk, we found a male bushveld rain frog. Now, the rain frogs are some of the cutest things that you have out here, and I want to see if I can show this one to you. I've kept it in a little container. A is because we don't pick up frogs out here with your hands. The acids that we have on our hands can harm them. So with frogs in the decline worldwide, it's a good thing not to pick up frogs with your hands. But come and have a look at this little guy. This is full grown. That's the male. Let me see if I can just get him in so that you can see him. Have a look at how cute he is. Little alien-like dude. Just look at that. Now the females are many times his size. Let's see if we can get his face. That's probably the most redeeming feature, is those faces that they have. And that bulldog-like stance. Now, apart from being quite noisy little frogs out here, they're also quite common, one of the more common of the frogs out here. The male is much smaller than the female. And the interesting thing about these particular frogs is that during amplexus, which is the mating of frogs, they have adhesion that also takes place. The male climbs onto the back of the female. He then secretes a chemical which causes her to secrete a glue, and she sticks him to her. So he gets stuck to her back, and I found a picture of it right there. And she then walks around with him stuck to her back. And you can actually see there, you can't actually separate them without actually killing him. You'll pull his skin off. You can see how much bigger the female is than him. Isn't that amazing? So that's these little guys. I quite enjoy them anyway. We're going to put him back in the bush. I'm going to send you off to Tayla.
We have found an elephant, an elephant, an elephant. We have found an elephant. There actually are 3. Thanks, Andre, for getting that tune stuck in my head. And I just thought that I'd sing it for all of you. But we finally found one of the creatures that we were looking for this morning. So the list is getting shorter. And, well, we've stumbled across 3 elephant bulls who look very wet and seem to be quite hungry as well, as they reach up to the tops of the trees to feed on only the most succulent leaves. That rhymed as well. That was very unintentional. I'm feeling a bit like Dr. Seuss this morning, but not quite as... well, he's got better poems than I do, of course. But I'm so happy. We haven't been really seeing the elephants around. And even though it's not a family with tiny little babies, at least we get to see some beautiful boys who in a couple of years are going to be massive. Oh, Chandre, look what's going on over here. It's a bit difficult. I think, should I go forward for you? Let me go forward. This elephant is stretching right up to the top of this tree. Oh, no. There we go. There's a gap. Sorry, it's a small gap, but there is one. And was reaching right to the top. So I wonder if it's going to do it again. It was standing on 3 legs. It was quite entertaining to see. Now, eating a marula tree, which seems to be the favorite food of the elephants at the moment, and for once not seeing them pushing the trees down, which is quite nice. I'm sure that the trees are quite happy about that, as it must be terrible to be uprooted from the ground and then to lay on your side for the rest of your life. And it also looks like they may have had a dust bath. I don't think now though, but if you look at this elephant, you can see a couple of patches of a rust color. So I suspect that maybe yesterday, before the rains, or they would have had a nice dust bath. They're all covered in this sort of orangey sand. I wonder where they've been. I haven't really seen too much red soil in the area, so perhaps they've maybe come from the north. Maybe Buffalo's Hook has got some areas where there's a bit of iron in the soil, which often causes the redness, and that, of course, is the oxidation process. When iron comes into contact with oxygen, it turns red, and that's also what happens with the rust. But let's hope these elephants don't rust with all the moisture around them. Now, looking at these boys' tusks, and I mentioned to you that they're relatively young still. They're not particularly old. And Justin, you were wondering by itself how much would a piece of ivory weigh. Now, Justin, it depends. These boys don't have too big of a tusk. Oh, I'll get your question now. He's now having a scratch. Did you see that? Just having a rub up on the marula tree. So what you're looking at, when you look at their tusks, we can't see the entire tusk. There's still a bit that goes into the flesh. So it's probably another ruler length, I would say. Oh, there he is, stretching up again to the top of the tree. Come on, do a jump for us, or can you reach that? I promise, Justin, I'll get back to your question. See what he's doing? He's trying to break some of the branches down from this marula so that he can then feed on the leaves. But he looks like he's struggling. And it's very typical to see elephants doing this. We saw it a lot in Zambia, and you see it in mana pools too. In the dry seasons, the only tree that has got leaves on it is the winter thorn acacias. And they are massive trees, sort of as big as knob thorns grow. Wow! And they will stand on their hind legs to reach the tops of the trees. But this elephant has still got it easy. There's still plenty of foliage on the lower branches. He just has to snap a couple of bits off every now and then, and he'll be quite happy. Maybe even these other mates that are around here will come over and feast on the marula leaves that he's pulled down. But Justin, let me get back to your question, because otherwise I'm going to get sidetracked again. So it depends on the tusk. Both tusks are not identical, so some may grow longer, some may get thicker. And, well, that would depend. These tusks, oh, it's hard to say. I wouldn't say more than about, let's take a guess, about 50 pounds. somewhere along there. They're not potentially huge, but a big elephant bull's tusks, oh my goodness. When I was in Zambia, it was very sad, and I think I told this story the other day of this elephant that had got poached, and we managed to capture the poachers though, and we obviously took back the ivory, and they were massive tusks. They must have stood at about 1.5 meters in sort of height. I'm so terrible. My conversions in feet are horrendous, but I shall practice again this afternoon. But they weighed quite a bit. They weighed just over 100 pounds. This boy, his tusks seem to be a little bit thicker than the other elephants that we were looking at, so the thickness will definitely make them weigh a little bit more. Not quite as long as the others, so maybe slightly more heavier than the others, so maybe 55, 60 pounds. And if you remember me telling you about the magnificent 7 elephants, the elephants that roamed the greater Kruger area that the scientists suspected to have the woolly mammoth gene in them. They were particularly large, weighing well in excess of 6 or 7 tons. And they had tusks that touched the ground and grew straight down rather than having that curve towards the sky that we see with these elephants. And their tusks were enormous. If I'm not mistaken, one weighed about almost 150 pounds. But then, of course, the other tusk was slightly smaller. So they're massive. It's not light stuff. It's heavy. But let's see. This bull is coming over to us now. And I don't think they're going to be particularly bothered by the roofs. I think that these elephants, they move over. We see it with Daryl, the elephant with a bell in his ear. He goes right to the Sabi River and then comes back to the north and heads into the Manuleti as well. So I'm sure that these boys have seen roofs. They've heard the different rumbles that the different makes of vehicles give out, so they won't be too bothered by us at all. I think Jamie said it, the only ones that might be quite interested will be the little Nkahuma cubs, because they probably have never seen roofs before until us. But even that, it'll be a quick adjustment and they'll be relaxed again. And he's been so careful and gentle as he's picking specific little plants that he wants to eat. He must have a craving for something. What that is, I'm unsure. But I'm very happy that we managed to find the elephants. Now, all we've got to do is find a shongololo, a millipede, before the end of drive. So I'm going to go searching for one of those creatures with lots of legs. But let's go back to Stef and see what he's got for you in the tent.
Today seems the day for the jewel beetles that are not described in any of the common books that we have around here. We had that previous buprestid, the jewel beetle with those stripes and the yellow on, and at the bottom of a flaky thorn acacia, I have just found that little guy. You can see him over there, no larger than my fingernail. But come and have a look at the colors on this one. Look at that. Isn't that just gorgeous? This deep purple color on the back of the wings. Decided that it doesn't want to play ball. And then on the belly, it has a bronze, metallic bronze color. And I'm going to see if I can show you the belly here. That is the bottom of this particular Schaefer, is this deep, deep bronze color. Don't worry, I'll flick you over now, back onto your... And look at the gold eye. Wow. That is the eye of the... That is amazing. And even down to the antennae are metallic. Now obviously, jewel beetles are designed to catch the sun and to look spectacular in the sun. Okay, I'm going to turn this one over just so we limit some panic. But that absolutely fantastic shape on the... Have a look there. Gorgeous. My find of the day. sitting underneath the leaf. So, oh, man. And you got that sheen going on there. These beetles are collected all over the world in insect collections and are highly traded. Some of them actually trading for many thousands of dollars and euros each. This one I'm going to hide away so that no one else can find him. Only I'll know where to find them in future. Anyway, it's come to that time of the day when I need to say goodbye. And I just want to say thank you. What an amazing experience this morning was for me. Thank you very, very much for your help, in particular with IDing all the insects that I didn't know. And I just want to say thank you for your questions and your support again. So, without further ado, I'm going to say enjoy your day or your night, wherever you are in the world, and we'll catch up with you again for the afternoon PM safari.
Now we're just having one last look around here, everybody. We're on quarantine, hoping we might see, bird. Hoping we might see an impala. There was a green wood hoopoo there that flied away, Brian. But we have not seen hide nor hair of another impala since we lost signal on Twin Dams Road. So we'll just have one quick look around here and see if we aren't very lucky indeed. They do quite like to be down in this little clearing area sometimes, especially if they're a bit hungry and it's a bit blustery, but I suspect they've gone into the thick stuff like everything else. You will notice I'm wearing my Jasmine.
Splendid.
It is very splendid. I can now smell it all the time. Splendidly pretty. Paul, on a subject completely unrelated to the jasmine on the side of my head, you want to know if we tend to drink coffee or tea in South Africa. We drink both. In our camp we drink quite a lot of coffee.
Way too much coffee.
Brian thinks we drink way too much coffee. I think we drink just about the right amount. Some people drink tea. Rebecca's a big tea drinker. Certainly my father and mother have tea twice a day. They have it in the morning and in the afternoon, and when I'm with them I share in that tradition. And of course it's very much a sort of throwback, I suppose, the days of the empire, Brian.
Oh, yes.
When you had to have tea and gin tonics at the right time of the day from the correct sort of crockery and cutlery. But yes, we drink both out here, Paul. I enjoy both, especially with naughty cakes and things, delicious.
What's your favourite, rusks?
No, I don't like rusks, Brian. You know I don't like rusks. All right, we're just outside home, everybody, so we're going to turn into home. Thank you for coming on our rainy safari today, and thank you especially for the wonderful conversation we had around animal emotions, and hopefully that little lion cub will no longer be suffering anymore. We will see you this afternoon for the Sunset Safari. I think we're doing an open rehearsal as far as I'm aware, so for 2 hours from 4 o'clock until 6 o'clock. We can hand you over to Tayla for the last few minutes of the drive. Bye-bye.
We've got two unlikely friends sitting up here on the tree. You can see a white-backed vulture, and then it looks like a tawny eagle on the right-hand side, who's very fluffed up and probably a little bit on the cold side this morning. Now, I thought this was so beautiful as we just came around the corner and saw these two perched up. And I don't think I've ever seen another species of bird, other than perhaps a drongo or the odd starling sitting with a vulture, mobbing it. But to see these two quite casually and quite happily sitting right next to each other is very interesting. And just a moment ago, they had a little bit of an argument and they sort of pecked each other, but now they've settled down and are back to being friends again. But I thought that this is quite wonderful. And they're probably just going to sit here. The rain has now stopped, touch wood as I touch my head. There's not a mizzle anymore. So it will give the birds an opportunity with this breeze to start grooming themselves, preening themselves, opening up their wings. letting their feathers dry out nicely. And I suspect that that's what's going to happen in the next couple of hours. Let's hope that the rain does stop for just a little bit. But isn't that incredible? But let's carry on. Remember, we've got one last thing that we want to find. We have got a Xongile that we need to find. Let's see if we can quickly pick one up. I wonder if we'll be able to. Oh my God. Sorry about that. We went into a tiny little depression, and apparently there were loads and loads of gremlins, so I had to fight them off with sticks and do all sorts of crazy movements like that with my hands. Xongile was also karate chopping, getting them away, so I apologize for that. But we're back now, and we've got 1 minute to find a Xongile. Will we do it, Xongile? Do you think we'll be able to find one? We've got to scan carefully on the trees though, because they seem to enjoy the trees at the moment, feeding on the leaves. Come on, Xongile, don't let us down. Okay, it seems as though we're not going to find a Xongile, but I've got some Nyalas. Hello, Nyalas. Can you see those Nyala? I'm trying to work out how to not get this pole in the way. Oh, there we go. And you can see them. I apologize, Nyala, for disturbing you from your little slumber, but I hope you keep nice and warm. Now we're coming into the final seconds of the show. I failed you by not finding the Xongile, but perhaps this afternoon there will be a couple of critters crawling around. Thank you to everybody, Stef, James, all the ladies in Final Control. We hope you have a wonderful dry morning, and we'll see you later today. From myself and Xongile, bye-bye.